Welcome to the Double R Show, the podcast that features everything about North Lincoln County. The Double R Show, directed and produced by Paul Robertson and hosted by the voice of Lincoln City, Roger Robertson.
Welcome to the Double R Show. The big one, Paul, the big one.
The big one, yeah. The Cascadia Subduction Zone is the big one that people always talk about for emergency preparedness. But it's also the little ones too, right? But if people aren't familiar with the big one, January 26th, 1700, 9 p.m. local time, was the last megathrust earthquake off of the coast of Oregon and Washington and is known as the Cascadia Subduction Zone.
Let's be prepared. That's exactly what we're going to talk about today. It could be the big one. It could be a little one. If it affects you, it's important. More in a moment.
Northwest Septic Service is your one-stop shop for all your septic needs.
Northwest Septic Service offers pumping, maintenance, repair, and inspections with one call, 541-994-6977.
Buying or selling a home? Northwest Septic Service can inspect your sewer line or an entire septic system.
Old or failing septic system? Northwest Septic Service can rejuvenate most drain fields, saving you thousands of dollars. 541-994-6977.
Serving Lincoln, Tillamook, and Yamhill counties, Northwest Septic Service.
Welcome to the Double R Show. The big one could conceivably happen. It will happen sometime. Here to talk about the potential for the big one and what we do in case of the big one is Sam Buckley, and Sam is with the Lincoln County Sheriff's Office. That is your position to work emergency preparedness?
Correct. I'm the county emergency manager.
That's a huge task in a county this size.
That's true. It feels overwhelming most days.
The big one could get us and put us in a bad way. What do we do to prepare for that?
Yeah, I think that's a really large question with a lot of different types of answers depending on who you are. But for our constituents, we encourage them to do general preparedness like we would for any event, and any type of preparedness that you're doing is helping you prepare for a Cascadia earthquake, right? So even if you're only preparing for a 2-day power outage, which I think after last year's ice storm, we should all be ready for at this point.
Should know something about it.
Yeah. That's still better than nothing. And that's usually the message we try to push. When we talk about Cascadia, it's such a huge thing that's going to result in such long-term damage and massive issues with our infrastructure, with water, with power, with internet, all these things, that I think it scares people into doing nothing. And that's really what I want to get away from. So I want to really encourage people that any preparedness is better than no preparedness. So while we do say you want to be 4 weeks ready, right? Have water for 4 weeks at a gallon a day per person or animal, right? We want to think about all this perishable food stashed away. That is unrealistic for many of our constituents who live in small apartments, who have lots of people living in a small space, who don't have the funds. So really any preparedness at all is better than none. So if you can stash a couple extra cans in your pantry, that is great. We love it. If you can grab an extra gallon of water, that is great. We love it. And all of those things are going to serve you in any disaster, whether that's Cascadia or a power outage or what have you.
And then rotate those items, right?
Yes. Yeah. So anything that has an expiration, you're going to want to rotate through. I think that's another big issue with water that discourages people from planning for it, is that when you're stashing these gallons of water away, you do have to rotate through them. And people struggle with, how do we do that? When do we use it? There's a lot of different ways to manage water that aren't stashing like gallons from the grocery store. You can buy filtration systems. You can buy different types of water catchment systems.
Is there one you recommend?
We don't usually recommend a brand because we're government.
Sure.
And you know how that goes. And so I think it's very variable, right? Because as a homeowner, you may want to install a larger way to manage your water, right? Or maybe you want to put in a rain catchment or whatever. Please check with your local city ordinances on whether or not you can put in a rain catchment. It varies from place to place, and I don't know those rules off the top of my head.
Okay.
But if you don't, then maybe the best method really is a couple of gallons in a closet to start you off, right? And so it's really variable because everybody's life is so different and those things can take up so much space and so much money. I don't know if that was a very helpful way to answer your question.
Can you use the milk jugs or is that not a good idea?
Oof, I'll be honest with you. I am not an expert in water management. We actually have a whole person in public health now.
Okay.
This is new, that does the public health side of preparedness. And I think that they would know that information off the top of their head, but I don't. What I do know is that if you are storing water, you want to be really cautious of it not getting contaminated. And the specifics of that are going to be dependent on what you're doing, right? So if it were me, I would Google it and then find a trusted resource, so not just anybody off the internet, and use that as my guidepost. The other thing I'll say is we have a lot of information on our website about water management that probably has the answer to that question, but I don't know it off the top of my head.
I don't get the sense that you are trying to scare people into getting ready.
Yes, that's true.
I don't get that. Why is that?
I think that emergency managers often rely on fear as a motivation factor. And for me personally, I don't think that works as well.
Okay.
Like just from a
Good.
personal
Thank you.
perspective, I would rather inspire people to talk to their neighbors or to think about preparedness in small chunks than make them so scared that they feel like they have to buy a bunch of stuff that isn't actually useful, right? What we don't want is people panic purchasing things that they aren't going to need or use. People, panicking so bad that they don't do anything, right? Like we've all heard of analysis paralysis. That's a very real thing. It keeps you from doing anything at all. And I think that is often fear-based. And so I would rather people kind of very realistically be able to do a few small things, than nothing at all. And for me, fear isn't the way to go.
If you are prepared for something small, you would be somewhat prepared for the biggie that could happen.
Correct. Any preparedness is better than no preparedness. And I feel that is so, so true, right? And people don't want to think about preparedness because it's scary, it's hard. We just put our heads in the sand. We don't want to think about it. Or they go all in. And going all in is a great method if it works for you. If it doesn't work for you and you're putting your head in the sand, then you have nothing. And that's really bad, right? We don't want people to put their head in the sand. So I think that if people can start to think about really small things, it doesn't have to be massive, right? To start off. And then the more that you have a little bit, it's much easier to build on that. Once I have 2 cans of beans that I'm rotating through, it's easy to add a third. Once I have my headlamp, it's easier for me to think about backstashing batteries, right? Those little steps here and there can be really beneficial. And I think sometimes we talk about people being 4 weeks ready, but the reality is that some of us have a lot of that preparedness stuff already in our homes. So it can be helpful just to think about where those things even are, right? Where do my winter things normally live? Can I pull those out, right? We as a culture have so much stuff. So I think that scaring people into running out and purchasing more isn't always the answer when we can rely on the things we already have and the people that are already in our communities. And with Cascadia, some of those issues are so huge, it's hard to wrap your mind around it. So just taking a couple steps here and there can really be the key to getting you a little bit more prepared.
If a group or an individual wants to talk to you, you go out and do presentations. If so, how do we make those arrangements?
Yeah, we do presentations throughout the community. They vary from place to place, and we take calls from individuals and are happy to schedule with them as well if we're available. They can call our office. Should I say the number now?
Sure.
Great. Okay, 541-265 4199 is our main office line. And when you call that, you'll get either me or the assistant emergency manager. Her name is Susan, and we can look at scheduling options. We have a presentation that's Cascadia specific where we talk about some of the science behind Cascadia, some of the impacts, and some things you can do to prepare. But we can also do presentations on other things, and we would love to move into more general preparedness so that we can get people thinking on a bigger scale. And I know that you've brought up Cascadia a couple times, but I've been here in the county since 2018, and I've worked for Lincoln County for a while. And the emergencies I've been through have been ice, fire, and pandemic. So even though we don't want to discourage people from thinking about Cascadia, I feel like thinking about the other maybe not smaller. Those were not small, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they weren't like massive, the whole place is ruined type disasters, can be really beneficial since they're things that everybody that's lived here for 5 years has lived through already. So I really just feel like we are super happy to have whatever kind of presentation you want. Just give us a call.
Be prepared.
Be
We'll
prepared.
be back in a moment.
Zantillo Law Group has moved. I'm Josh Zantillo, and our law firm is now located across from the Lincoln City Community Center on Northeast 21st. Our law firm of knowledgeable professionals stand ready to assist you in life's matters.
You'll find a book for every occasion at Bob's Beach Books. Something to read as you relax by an open fire? We have it. Studying a particular topic? We have that too. Traveling to a far-off land? Discover it first by reading. Bob's Beach Books in the Ocean Lake area of Lincoln City? Come discover.
Wouldn't it be great to have all your insurance needs handled by one agency? This is Charlotte Lado with Farmers Insurance and the Insurance Store. Visit our office next to the Wildflower Grill in Lincoln City. Let us be your one stop for your personal, commercial, health, and Medicare insurance needs.
David Jameson is with us, and David has got a pedigree of lots of things, CERT being one of them. But you gave me a line before we started, everybody needs to have a carrier pigeon. What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean that if a Cascadia subduction zone event was to occur and all other communication was to break down, I mean cell phones, the internet, everything we rely on, that what's left at that point may in fact be a carrier pigeon.
Interesting. And it could conceivably come to that, couldn't it?
It could conceivably come to that. You know, the infrastructure that we use for communication involves towers and lines and needs electricity in order to operate. And if all those things fail in a Cascadia subduction zone event, then we lose access to those things.
So what is the CERT team doing to mitigate that?
One of the things we do is we practice using handheld radios, specifically GMRS radios, General Mobile Radio Service radios. That's an FCC band. Those radios can be used in the event of any kind of communication failure because they only rely on the antenna on the radio and the batteries inside them in order to operate. So when you have those two things working, they'll work just fine.
How prepared is the CERT team here in Lincoln City?
Yeah, I think we're probably more prepared than the average person in that we practice preparedness and take it seriously such that it becomes a lifestyle. There's so many facets to preparedness. It's not just having enough food or water. It's also making sure that you have medical supplies. What if your son or daughter falls down, skins their knee, breaks their arm? Can you help with that? What if someone is choking and their airway is blocked? How do you fix that? What if there's excessive bleeding happening? How do you resolve that? These are kind of day-to-day issues that happen to most of us over the course of our lives. So we help teach and reinforce those kind of problem-solving measures.
And how many people are involved in the CERT team here?
Yeah, our CERT team has about 40 active members right now. And in Lincoln County, there are a number of CERT teams. We're not the only one. We're tied to our sponsoring agency, North Lincoln Fire and Rescue. But there are other CERT teams that are tied to other fire departments or districts throughout the county. So in South County, in Newport, in East County, there's a CERT team. So yeah, throughout the county.
So how does one become a member of the CERT team?
Yeah, so FEMA actually created a training course for CERT. And the training course is an 8-week course. It's about 16 hours of classroom training. Then it's followed by an all-day Saturday event, which is a skills practice in the morning, and then a mock disaster drill in the afternoon. So students we hold these classes at Oregon Coast Community College here in Lincoln City. And as a matter of fact, we're going to start our next class on Thursday, April 10th at 6 p.m. Oregon Coast Community College has been a great partner. We're very fortunate. They'll handle all the registrations and the promotion for us. And we usually have a full class. We'll start with something like 30 people. And then over time, some people drop out for one reason or another. And then you have to complete all 8 units. And you can do that either in person or online. There's actually an online portion of this that's available for folks who miss a class. And then they have to complete the skills workshop and the mock disaster drill. And the mock disaster drill is a lot of fun. If you're on the other side of it, that is.
That is.
helping people get through it. But it puts the students in more of a real world scenario where the lights all go out, there's chaos, there's people screaming and yelling who've been injured. So we actually simulate a disaster. We usually do this at Station 16, the St. Clair Fire Station.
And you have all of the newbies along with those that have been a member of the CERT team, everybody participating together?
This is an opportunity for the new folks to put into practice what they learned. Yep. So they have to do search and rescue. They'll have to do triage for the patients they encounter, how to get people out of a bad situation. And there are simple ways to get people out, which they may or may not take advantage of. So we're there to kind of watch them in action, and then we'll have a debrief at the end to help them learn.
Does somebody have to have special training to become a member of the CERT team, or what happens, David?
Yeah, not at all. Not at all. I spent my career in business, in the software industry. I had zero training when it came to emergency preparedness or disaster response. But when my wife and I moved here full time in 2015, and the New Yorker article came out and mentioned that everything west of I-5 would be toast, that really got my attention.
Very good.
Yeah, it really
Not
did.
very good, but it's good that it got your attention.
And I decided, my wife and I both decided, gee, if we're going to live here full time, we might want to learn some of these skills. So we actually went through the Depoe CERT training program at the time in 2016, led by Sue Graves, who is a great
with community
resource.
school district.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, she's the safety resource officer for Lincoln County School District. So she and Kay Wyatt were teaching that, and they just did a fantastic job. I learned a lot and continued with it ever since.
Is there a misconception people have of CERT?
I think so. Sometimes, there's no physical fitness requirement for CERT like there would be if you were Or age. And we want people of all ages and all ability, because really the more prepared people are, their families are, their neighbors are, the better they're able to help out each other in the event of a major or minor emergency.
My life has been communications forever and a day. And again, we started out talking about communications, and it is critically important that we have the ability to communicate.
It really is, yeah. So in CERT, we use GMRS radios. We also use a repeater that's in town here in Lincoln City. This repeater was made available by the Oregon Coast Repeater Group, and it sits on a tower and at a good elevation, and it's amazing the reach of that repeater. So that means that CERT team members who live in Neatsu can communicate with CERT team members who live in Taft, and it's all via the repeater. So we're very fortunate to have that resource here, and it's a great one. And it's actually continued to work during power outages. So we had the ice storm in January of 2024.
Even without the ongoing power source coming into it.
Yes, because there's a generator at the repeater site, and it is the responsibility of somebody in the police department, I'm not sure who, to head on up there and make sure that if the power goes out, that generator's turned on.
CERT team, Lincoln City. David Jameson's been here. We'll take a break. More in a moment.
ACM Award winners, Eli Young Band. Got a little drunk last night. Live in concert. Saturday, February 1st, 8 p.m., Chinook Winds Casino Resort. A night of timeless classics. On sale now at ChinookWinds.com. Chinook Winds, where concerts are better at the beach.
Depoe Bay is going to have a rally, and we're talking about an emergency power solution rally. With us right now is Joe Cannon. What is an emergency power solution rally?
Essentially what it is, it's a group of people getting together with a solution to an ongoing problem of backup electricity. When your primary source of electricity goes down, you have to have a secondary source. Well, then you run into a fuel problem if you have gasoline, natural gas, oil, diesel, so on and so forth. So essentially what we're trying to prepare for is the big one. If you have a 30-day plus outage, you need to have 30 days worth of fuel. Well, we, through a long period of education and research, found a grant from the ODOE, Oregon Department of Energy. It's 2-phase. The first phase is going to be development and doing the due diligence part of it. The second phase is construction once the first phase is approved. So essentially what we're doing is we have a live hydrogen fuel cell coming to do demonstrations to show people how electricity is generated from a hydrogen fuel cell.
Now, you've got a background in this. I mean, this is not a hobby for you.
Yes, that's correct. I was in the electric power industry for 32 years. I ran commercial power plants. What got me started was the United States Air Force. I went into the military and I learned, it's called Electric Power Pro, power production. So when you go through that school, you come out and you could run diesels or small gas turbines.
Wow.
And so throughout the career, I ran a 550 megawatt system, variable kinds of units, coal, oil, gas, hydro, solar, wind, biomass, and whatever it was, everything except nuclear.
So now are you looking at a project that would power up all of Depoe Bay or just specific areas of Depoe Bay? Or what's the story?
Essentially what we're doing is if the primary source of power goes down, then we will kick in. So we're only doing the emergency buildings is our long-term plan. Initially, City Hall is under a grant right now. And once that gets approved, and then we will do our due diligence and figure out what the best way to go for. It's either going to be solar or battery or fuel cell. So one of those three will pick the best one that's most affordable as well as secure for our systems.
So you're not talking about a generation plan?
No, sir.
Okay.
We're only staying with a microgrid, which is just strictly standby, because if we lose power, we have no options. You had to go with diesel, and they're loud, and you have to have a lot of fuel, and so you run into that problem of resupplying, and it's not clean. So this system and this grant, in particular of this grant, it has to be totally green, non-fossil fuel, non-polluting, non-carbon footprint. That's a big one.
That's a lot of nons.
That's a non. Well, that's staying within the rails. Well,
Sure.
Non-carbon footprint means that we don't emit any CO2 into the atmosphere. So if you notice, though, the country has signed a statement from the Paris Accord. As of 2035, we have to be 50% reduction in carbon footprint. Well, this is heading in that direction. But we're staying strictly on standby. The entire coastal range of Oregon has 0 backup power systems, nothing. So if the grid goes down, everyone has to rely on what they have. And essentially, we are going to stay online for at least 30 days. Once we develop more, we'll extend that period.
Now you talked about City Hall. Why not the fire station?
That's included, but the way the grant is written, you have to go one site per grant. And so we went with City Hall because that's the command post. That's what directs everything from there.
Interesting.
Yes.
This is rather a ambitious undertaking.
Very much so. But we have a team we call the task force. We started in one section of the city in Little Well Cove, and then it all started there because warming shelters were critical when we had our 55-hour power outage.
Right.
So we got together, and I presented this idea, and I found the funding. Then we learned that we had to grow bigger, so we went to the city and Mayor Short, and we presented, I believe it was this past summer. Mayor Short said, "I'll be on your task force." I said, "Great. It's open for everyone. Everyone could be on the task force because it's about solutions, not problems."
Okay, now the rally is going to be January 25, Depoe Bay Community Center. Who can come?
Everyone can come. We're going to have 2 phases. The first phase goes from 10 to 12. Mostly political folks or business owners. We're gearing that presentation for long-term problem solving that they have. For example, like the grocery stores. They didn't have any power, they lose all their product. The medical facilities, the communication places, the water and sewage, the fire department, the police department, all the emergency essential services have to be first. And then we will grow into other things.
So are you talking about a generation operation at all of these different sites?
Yeah, it's called a microgrid.
Okay.
So each individual building has its own power supply that aren't interconnected. So
that aren't.
Okay. There will not be. That way, you are on your own, and you don't have those problems when you're interconnected. So we're not getting involved in transmission lines, because the 3 things in electricity is you have your customer, You have the way that you generate your electricity. Then you have transmission lines. Transmission lines is the weak point. So whatever the biggest power plant you have, if you don't have a decent transmission line, you cannot move that power in any direction. So therefore, that's what we're trying to alleviate. So you'll have individual power systems per building. So that building will stay lit, and also part of the community center or the headquarters for the city has a warming shelter in the basement. So we try to get that as well.
Do you know of other communities that have undertaken such a ambitious project?
No, there is none that I can find. In the state of Oregon, there are none. They're all individual. They all work together. They do great jobs, but we decided let's put it under the total umbrella. We call it the menu of power systems. So we actually go through the research of what would work best. You have options. You have wind, you have solar, you have biomass, you have it just depends on where you're at and what part of the country that would work best for you. For our operations, fuel cells would work everywhere. There's no problem. Remote operations, anybody that has electricity could use a fuel cell backup.
Joe, I wish you the best of luck. This is an ambitious project that is something that could change the scope, not only of Depoe Bay, but the rest of the world.
Yes, and to add to it, the long-term goals, if Depoe Bay suffers a casualty of mass proportions, which it very well could. We're over 300 years now of the last earthquake. In fact, the 26th, I believe, is going to be the 325-year anniversary. So I'm researching now vertical takeoff aircraft, like overgrown sized drones. There's a company out there that's very interesting to study, and they will run off of hydrogen or electricity. So by having these backup systems, we could power them up. And since we're in Central Oregon coast, we have a way to extract and bring in people as we need to. It's not a helicopter, it's not a jet, and we don't need a runway. We just need a big square to land it. So that's our long-term goal.
We at La Roca are proud of our food, but don't take our word for it. Read the reviews. One person wrote, "The service was friendly and efficient." Another writes, "La Roca has become one of our favorites because it's authentic Mexican food."
If you're looking for great early garden fresh produce, it's Kenny's IGA in the Bay Area of Lincoln City. 4 generations of Morgans caring for your every grocery need. All of your favorite beverages, a full deli, meat, produce, and of course, groceries.
We may be young, but we are experienced. Hi, Adina Zeller here, and Zeller's restaurants are now a year old, but the experience in preparing and serving food goes way back generations. Zeller's Lincoln City and Rose Lodge. Come on in.
Well, we've been talking about some very serious topics in the last half hour, and it is being prepared for the big one and or the little one.
Right, yeah. And so just to remember that coming up here this Saturday, January 25th, is one of those events that you should be attending to learn more about preparedness and the like down there in Depoe Bay. So, go down to Depoe Bay almost any time of the day, right? It's a full event.
All day long. And it is a phenomenal thing that they are doing in Depoe Bay, the only place like this in the entire United States.
Well, start with the smallest navigable harbor and go from there, right?
And move up from
lots
there.
of great stuff happening in Depoe Bay.
Theater West is on stage right here in Lincoln City with a great play. Dial M for Murder goes through February 1 with showtimes at 7 o'clock at Theater West. Tickets are $20 for adults, $18 for students, military and or students, and $15 for kids age 12 and under. Dial M for Murder, Theater West right here in Lincoln City. Also, Lincoln City Chamber of Commerce is going to be meeting at the Lincoln City Cultural Center. Moe's is providing the lunch, and that's going to be on Tuesday, January 28th. Lincoln City Community Days starting up tonight, in fact, on this Thursday night, the first of the meetings, and it will continue to meet up until April 18th through the 26th will be the time for Community Days in Lincoln City. It's an opportunity. It's a time that we get to celebrate us.
Right. And so those meetings are at the community college. Is that right again?
At the community college, correct. At the community college is where the meetings are going to be held. Dave Price is helping head that up again. And thanks to Dave for putting that together. Veterans, if you're looking for a free homemade soup and sandwich lunch, it's available twice a month, the second and fourth Wednesdays, 12 to 2, and it is at the Lincoln City Elks Lodge. Anything else that we have to talk about today?
Well, we just wanted to mention what we're going to have coming up next week here in the near future, and just the fact that the warming shelter there in Lincoln City is open, and so it's just right there, center of town, 21st Street, on kind of where the old flooring store was recently
Correct.
at. So
Correct.
people can get intake there after 6 p.m. Any day of the week. So.
And we'll have a complete interview about that coming up next week right here on the Double R Show. It is rewarding what has happened because of the city and the amount of money that the city contributed to this program to get it up and operational right here in town.
Right, correct, yeah.
We have one of the shelters here in Lincoln City, one in Newport, so people can stay warm, dry. It's wintertime. It's wintertime. So that will do it to the doings on the Double R Show. Please remember to like, subscribe, and share so you, your family, and friends around the world and across the street can join us on the Double R Show. Pick up a card. Pick up a card, send us an email, and get on the list. And if you want to support the Double R Show, there's a way that they can do that as well.
Yeah, just go to the website, doublershow.com, and you can look for our Buy Me a Coffee or Buy Me a Donut program where you can, for a small amount of money each month, $1 to $5 to $13, you can support the Double R Show here in Lincoln County.
You could ask the chicken lady. And Cheryl, we do appreciate your support.
We do.
For Paul, Jana, I'm Double R. That'll do it to the doings. Have yourself a happy day.
You've been listening to The Double R Show. Join Roger and Paul Robertson as they explore everything about North Lincoln County. The Double R Show, produced by Always Productions and hosted by Roger Robertson. Have a story? Email contact@alwaysproductions.com or call 458-201-3039. For The Double R Show, I'm Jana Grawn.